The target audience for this video is people applying for mid to senior roles, and people who really know what they are doing and already know one or two things about behavioral interviewing. So if you're just getting started with the things, I would very much recommend you looking to other videos, because this is for advanced use cases. So the question is this: once you feel like familiar to answer this behavioral question, you feel familiar with the STAR format, is there anything else you could further improve? And my experience shows that there are quite a couple of ways that you could improve. You could further train yourself to become even better at answering with these things. And in today's video, I'm going to share with you 6 ways, 6 methods that you can tune up your answers to behavioral interviewing and eventually drive the conversation your way during the interview and put together a great show, essentially. The first thing I want to talk about here is tell them what they want to hear. So when getting asked a question, understand why they are asking you this question in the first place. For example, when they ask you, tell me about the time when you failed. Well, yes, it is important that you think of a time when you genuinely failed, but why would they ask you such a question? They ask you such questions because we want to see how you grew from that failure. They want you to talk about their learnings. They want you to focus on that specific aspect. So knowing this will help you to give the great answer. And this was an obvious one, but there are examples that are not as easy to spot, such as tell me about the time when you found 2 problems that eventually led to you finding a 3rd problem. Now, why would they ask you such a question? They would ask you such a question because they want to see your ability to analyze the situation. So you should focus on the analysis, qualitative, quantitative, whatever else is relevant to your answer, but focus on your ability to analyze. And let's make one last example here. Tell me about the time when you received negative feedback from your manager. How did you react? Now, why would they ask you such a question? They would ask you such a question because they want to see how you eventually earned their trust, how you build confidence, how you build eventually rapport, but also mainly confidence in the conversation. So you see, it's not all the examples, all the questions that are so obvious to understand as to why they ask you the question in the first place. The second point that I want to touch upon this video is, what if you don't have an answer? What if you don't have an immediate answer for that specific behavioral question? And as you probably already know by now, these behavioral questions are designed in such a way that anyone has an answer for them. So the challenge here, especially for the audience of this video, that is people applying for mid to senior roles, is to actually deliver a great answer. So what can you do about this? One technique here is to simply start talking about a hypothetical situation, that how you would deal with such a problem. And you could go on with such a hypothetical situation until they stop you and ask you for a specific one, or you could go for at least 20 seconds until you get a specific answer. So to give a simple example here, tell me about the time when you had a challenge in meeting a deadline. So you could start talking like whenever I have a challenge meeting whenever I have something new in a project that's putting the deadline in danger, I would ensure that I will communicate with all relevant stakeholders of the project, and I would go above and beyond to diagnose, to understand the issue. Eventually, I would also consult with other members of the team to see what can be done, what's the impact, and so on and so forth. And I already won 10 seconds here. Right? And once I can figure out the specific answer, say, oh yes, and the best example would be to talk about the time when I was working there. I was leading a team of this many people, and in this project they were supposed to do this, and you'd continue with your star answer. So this is how you avoid downtimes in a conversation, and you actually keep the interviewer engaged and keep the conversation interesting, and you preserve your ability to score points not only on how you answer, the aspects that touch upon your answer, but also putting together a great show. Because let's admit it, I mean, people appreciate these things. Anyone appreciates, an interviewer will always appreciate a candidate that goes above and beyond to put together a great show, and shows that they're genuinely interested in getting this job. The third aspect that I want to touch upon here is there is actually a pretty finite list of behavioral questions. So if you've exhausted all possible scenarios, and if you've looked up online on all possible lists with behavioral questions for that company, I did actually publish in another video rather comprehensively with, I believe, 150 such behavioral questions. So if time allows, I would say, why not go through those questions just in order to ensure that you cover as many scenarios as possible. Again, assuming that you already know how to answer these types of questions properly. So I probably link somewhere these questions, or maybe in the video description. So but just one note here, just keep in mind that it can be very easy to rephrase these questions in many, many ways. So do not memorize things. I mean, needless to say, but do not memorize things, or don't think about questions in a very specific way. So think about the questions in a broader sense, in what they want to hear when going about the full exhaustive list. But anyhow, so going through all possible questions, going through a list of upwards of 100 questions, I think it's a useful exercise. If not to cover more scenarios, at least to gain confidence in yourself going into presumably an on-site interview. The fourth point that I want to touch upon here is, especially during on-site interviews, what happens is, for example, in companies such as Google, Facebook, or Amazon, these interviews can take quite a while, and the interviewers might ask many, many questions, and more often than not, people are constrained to talk about the same example twice or more about the same specific project. And to be honest with you, this is not a disqualifier, but it's not great to talk about the same thing over and over again, because those interviewers will eventually corroborate notes, and they will see that, hey, this guy is talking about the same thing over and over again. What can you do about this? Well, besides preparing a diverse range of questions, so on and so forth, what you could do here is to simply ensure that you do not make it look like you talk about the same project over and over again. How can you do this? By not mentioning the name of the project, by zooming in, by zooming out of the project. And this is only to name a few, but the main point here is to know that this is how you get out of that potential serious problem that you have the same story for two or more questions. So for example, if I'd be asked, tell me about the time when you failed. Well, I had a software business that actually failed. I invested all my time for 5 years and it failed. And then they would ask me, tell me about the time when you were all the way 75% through a project but had to pivot strategy. I would simply zoom in that project, talk about a significant feature that, I wouldn't mention that it was in the software business. I was saying, well, I was project manager of a team of 5 people. We're supposed to deliver a survey builder, which was supposed to work in some way, and 75% through the project we had some extra feature or extra requests that made us redesign the whole thing, and we eventually developed the project. So notice I didn't reference my HR software business. I just noticed the project. So you could do the same. Zooming in and zooming out of the project makes it sound like different, distinct experiences, and this is something that can very much play to your advantage. Number 5. Try to intentionally omit some of the details, some of the key details, some of the key quantifiers, if you want, of the example, specifically in order to attract their curiosity, to get them interested in that specific part of the story, which is obviously some part that you would very much enjoy talking about, and you want to drive the conversation that way. You want to drive the follow-up questions your way. This is a pretty advanced technique, but I can assure you that it's confirmed by multiple people that it really works. I actually also mentioned it in a video 6 months or more ago. So probably more interesting would be to talk about, to give a specific example here. So let's say I would go with an example like, tell me about the time when you had to pivot strategy in a fast-paced project. right? So at the time I was running an HR software. I led a team of 5 people, and we were supposed to integrate around 20 job boards. We had around $50,000 worth of ads flowing through the software every month. And at a given point in time, we realized that 2 of these job boards were performing so much better than others. And we actually had to prioritize a deeper integration, or a better integration with these 2 job boards in order to further optimize the software and eventually make it more profitable. And this turned to be hugely successful. We ended up making so much more money, and even cut better deals with those 2 ads marketplaces that we were focusing on at the time. So but this was a win both for our clients as well for us, because we eventually made a lot more money from this. Right, so notice how I began my example with quantifiable information. I was leading a team of 5 people, integrating 20 job boards, a flow of 20 we had $50,000 worth of ads through the software. And then towards the end of my answer, I didn't quantify the results. I only said we had more ads flowing through the software, we had better partnerships with those 2 marketplaces. I didn't say by how much. All right, so this automatically triggers a follow-up question. Okay, but how much more profitable it was? Or, maybe it won't go that in such a positive context. But anyway, the idea is that you omit details from the result. You intentionally omit to quantify the results, so you can catch their attention to focus on the results which were actually to your advantage. So this is how you eventually trigger their curiosity and eventually make the conversation evolve your way during such an exchange. And number 6, make sure that, especially for on-site interviews, you will be more often than not told who will be interviewing you. And I know that many people, it's obvious that you are going to look up their online profiles, but as an added thing to looking up their online profiles, look at their what are their hobbies, what they like, what they enjoy doing in their free time, such as if they like binge watching Netflix movies. Maybe consider introducing Netflix, the keyword, in one of your answers in your exchange with them. Of course, this would be a pretty direct pitch, so they might get it, but I gave it for the sake of an example. But you could find traits in their profiles that you could relate to your own experiences and on which you would ensure that you would talk about during the time you're interviewing with that specific person. And it's only natural that they will like better your examples because of this. So there you go. These were the 6 tips as to how to influence, how to score better in behavioral interviewing. Some of them are obvious, some of them not so obvious. So hopefully you found some interesting information here. And remember, if you want to support this channel, please feel free to share your interview outcomes in the comment sections of the videos. Thank you.